Chapter 34:17. Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin looked at each other and saw the seriousness and hesitation in each other's eyes. At this point in the battle, they were hesitant. Could they still kill Lu Ming? They wanted to retreat. The two of them moved and leaned against each other, afraid that Lu Ming would defeat them one by one. Bam! At this moment, Lu Ming took a step forward and shot up into the sky. He waved his combat sword and charged toward Liu Tianxin and Bing Tong. Kill! Kill! Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin shouted at the same time and charged toward Lu Ming. Once again, the two of them clashed and fought fiercely. The two of them fought in the sky and at Fengyun Mountain. They were locked in a fierce battle, and after a few hundred moves, there was still no clear winner. Boom! Boom! After a few more explosions, Lu Ming, Bing Tong, and Liu Tianxin retreated. They retreated tens of thousands of meters and faced each other from afar. At this moment, Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin had a few wounds on their bodies. Although they were not fatal, they were still bleeding. On the other hand, Lu Ming did not have any wounds on his body because he was protected by Qiuqiu's armor. However, there was a rebounding force that went through the armor and injured Lu Ming. Many of his bones were broken and Lu Ming used his divine power to reconnect them. Damn it! Why is this kid's divine power so dense? Is it endless? Can't it be used up? Bing Tong roared in his heart and was even more shocked. It was the same for Liu Tianxin. She found it hard to calm down. They came from powerful forces in the primitive universe and were well informed. They had seen many perverted geniuses. However, it was extremely rare to see someone as perverted as Lu Ming. The two of them wanted to retreat even more. If this continued, their divine power would not be able to hold on. Lu Ming, this is bad. My power is almost used up. I can't maintain the form of the combat sword. Qiuqiu sent a message to Lu Ming. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed and his heart skipped a beat. Indeed, Qiuqiu did not have the quantifying formula. After such a long battle, it was normal that his divine power was about to run out. However, without Qiuqiu's help, Lu Ming would have died if he had to face Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin alone. However, Lu Ming's face didn't show the slightest change. His fighting spirit was still arrogant, and he looked like he wanted to fight to the end. At this moment, Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin looked at each other and nodded silently. Lu Ming, your strength is indeed not bad. Fine, I'll spare your life today. We'll fight another day. Bing Tong spoke, his voice resounding throughout the entire place. They're going to stop fighting. Many people were surprised. All the people present were geniuses and none of them were stupid. Bing Tong's words meant that he wanted to stop the battle. Obviously, he was not confident in Lu Ming. What he said was just to give himself a way out. No matter when you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. Lu Ming was delighted, and his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Great. However, Lu Ming, let me tell you, if you break the rules like this, we won't be the only ones looking for you. Let's go. Having said that, Bing Tong turned around and left. Liu Tianxin did the same. When the two alliance leaders left, the people from the two forces naturally followed them. Let's go too. Let's go. Since the people from Soldier Peak Alliance and Skyheart Alliance had left, the people from the other forces didn't dare to stay any longer. They quickly brought their men and left, afraid that they would be too late. Lu Ming didn't chase after them. At that moment, he didn't have the strength to chase after them. Qiuqiu's divine power couldn't hold on for much longer. Moreover, Sumo's injuries weren't light either. If this continued, his injuries would worsen. The other party's retreat was exactly what he wanted. They've retreated. The people from the Dragon Alliance were the happiest. All of them smiled and were pleasantly surprised. Initially, they thought that the Dragon Alliance was in danger. However, they didn't expect Lu Ming's strength to exceed their expectations. With his strength alone, he managed to fend off the attacks of the 10 forces in the eastern region of Fengyun Mountain. Moreover, he managed to fight Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin to a draw. Although he had borrowed external help, it was an unimaginable result. Listen up. In the future, if anyone comes to join the Dragon Alliance, don't take them in for the time being. Lu Ming instructed his subordinates. Tian Xing, Shui Chu, and the others' eyes lit up. Then, they shouted, yes. Lu Ming felt a little helpless. Based on the ratio that he had given, there would be more people joining him in the future. This was tantamount to touching the cake of others. The leaders of the other forces wouldn't let him off easily. This time, it was Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. Next time, if someone even more terrifying came, Lu Ming would be in danger. Therefore, he had to bear with it for the time being. Now was the time to lay low. Anyway, the primordial divine crystals were enough for Lu Ming. With a large amount of primordial divine crystals, Lu Ming was improving rapidly in all aspects. He just had to bear with it for a while. When he had a breakthrough in his cultivation, it wouldn't be too late to recruit more people. Currently, Lu Ming's cultivation was only in the 6th layer of the King God realm. When he reached the 7th or 8th layer of the King God realm, he would have nothing to fear with Qiu Qiu. After giving his orders, Lu Ming returned to his secluded cultivation area. He took out a healing elixir and swallowed it to heal his injuries. After a while, when Lu Ming's injuries were completely healed, he continued to refine the primordial divine crystals. The news of the previous battle spread like a whirlwind, shocking everyone. Moreover, after the battle, more people came to join Lu Ming. They wanted to join the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming had enough fighting strength to protect them. Moreover, he gave them good treatment. What reason did they have not to join? However, they were all rejected by Tian Xing and the others. They clearly told them that the Dragon Alliance was no longer recruiting. Those who wanted to join Lu Ming could only leave helplessly. When the leaders of the major forces heard the news, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. In this world, the leaders of the major forces could not force other geniuses to swear an oath of life origin to join them. If they did so, no other geniuses would join them in the future. Therefore, the subordinates of these forces could come and go freely. Now that they heard that the Dragon Alliance was no longer recruiting, they heaved a sigh of relief. Otherwise, they would have to increase their treatment to keep people. Just like that, the Fengyun Mountain fell into relative peace. Of course, the occasional fight was unavoidable. Lu Ming did not care about what was happening outside. He focused on cultivating and refining the primordial divine crystals. Time passed, year after year. In the blink of an eye, another 50 years had passed. In 50 years, Lu Ming had refined a few thousand pieces of primordial divine crystals. However, these primordial divine crystals paled in comparison to his harvest. In the past 50 years, he had stored more than 100,000 pieces of primordial divine crystals. These were all resources for his future cultivation. In the past 50 years, Lu Ming had been improving rapidly. He was improving every day. Lu Ming had cultivated the purple-armored ancient god body to the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body. Chapter 34:18. There's still a way to improve. When Lu Ming reached the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body, he felt that something was wrong. He realized that the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body was not the end. There was still a lot of room for improvement. However, in the ancient god skill that Lu Ming had obtained in the ancient god world, the purple-armored ancient god body was the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body. Could it be that the ancient god skill that I have is incomplete? Lu Ming frowned. It was possible. Lu Ming would not be wrong. He was 100% sure that there were realms above the purple-armored ancient god body. He thought of Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. Although they did not cultivate the ancient god body but other primitive god bodies, he could still compare them. Their primitive god bodies had almost surpassed the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body and were about to enter another level. It could be the level above the purple-armored ancient god body. It seems like I have to buy the complete ancient god skill, Lu Ming said softly. In this world, there were many supreme talents from various forces and races in the primitive universe who cultivated the primitive god body. He believed that there must be others who cultivated the ancient god body and could buy the complete ancient god skill. My cultivation has also reached the 7th layer of King God realm. Lu Ming smiled. After refining so many primitive divine crystals, Lu Ming's cultivation had finally reached the 7th layer of King God realm. He had entered the ranks of high-level King God realm. This speed was extremely shocking. It's a pity that the primitive divine crystals can't be absorbed by the quantifying formula. Otherwise, the refining speed would be greatly increase. A thought flashed through Lu Ming's mind. The primitive divine crystals had to be refined by the ancient god heart to produce the blood qi and increase the strength of the ancient god body. If the quantifying formula was used to refine the primitive divine crystals, that effect would be removed and only pure energy would be left. During this period, not only had his ancient god body and cultivation made great breakthroughs, but Lu Ming's origin divine power factor was also increasing rapidly. Another 2 types of divine power's origin divine power factor had undergone a third awakening. Now, Lu Ming had 10 types of god power that had awakened 3 times, leaving only 1 type of god power that had yet to awaken 3 times. During this period of time, I will temporarily slow down the refinement of the primordial divine crystal and comprehend the quintessence divine energy factor wholeheartedly. I will strive to awaken the last type of divine energy for the 3rd time, Lu Ming muttered. Then, he prepared to close his eyes and cultivate. At this moment, his voice transmission jade talisman buzzed. Someone was sending him a message. Lu Ming took it out and took a look. Tian Xing had sent it to him. Lu Ming's expression changed slightly as he scanned the contents of the jade talisman with his spiritual sense. News from Tianxing said that something had happened to Fengyun Mountain recently. At the western side of Fengyun Mountain, a new force suddenly emerged. It was the Barbarian League. This force had many people. Not only were there young geniuses, but there were also experts from the older generation. Their overall strength was very strong. Not long after they appeared, they destroyed a few forces in the western region of Fengyun Mountain, causing a commotion among the other forces. Barbarian alliance, could it be the barbarian race? Lu Ming's eyes flickered. During this period of time, there had been no news from the barbarian tribe. It seemed that they had finally appeared. The barbarian tribe, Lu Ming muttered. His eyes flashed with a cold light. The barbarian tribe was bent on killing him. He would not let them go. Sooner or later, there would be a war between the 2 forces. Then, Lu Ming replied to Tianxing. He asked them to keep an eye on the Barbarian League and report to him if anything happened. Lu Ming then continued to cultivate. He had to seize the time to raise his cultivation level. Man Ku, the genius of the barbarian tribe, was extremely powerful. He was definitely not weaker than Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. Therefore, he had to be stronger to be confident. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 8 years had passed. In these 8 years, Lu Ming did not refine the primordial divine crystal. Instead, he focused on comprehending the quintessence divine energy factor. Finally, the last type of divine energy had awakened 3 times. In this way, all of Lu Ming's divine powers had awakened 3 times. There were a total of 11 types of divine powers. In addition to Lu Ming's cultivation level of the 7th level of the King God realm and the strength of his peak purple-armored ancient god body, Lu Ming's combat strength had reached a new height. Now, Lu Ming was confident that he could contend with Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin without Qiuqiu's help. Of course, he could only contend with them. After all, their quintessence divine energy factor had awakened 4 times and they were peak divine kings. In terms of divine powers, even though Lu Ming had mastered 11 types of divine powers and had awakened 3 times, it was still difficult for him to contend with them. He needed to use the battle formula to contend with them. Of course, with Qiuqiu's strength, Lu Ming was confident that he could kill Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. After all, Qiuqiu had not been idle these past few years. He had devoured a large number of divine artifacts and his body was constantly improving. Although he had not broken through to the Divine Lord realm, he was extremely close to it. His strength was several times stronger than before. At this moment, Lu Ming received another message from Tianxing. Is it the Man League again? Gather all the forces in Fengyuan Mountain and gather at the peak of the mountain. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. All these years, he had been paying attention to the Man League. In the past 8 years, the Man League had developed rapidly. Now, the western region of Fengyun Mountain had been completely occupied by the Man League. They had occupied a quarter of the territory of Fengyun Mountain. Without a doubt, the Man League had become the most powerful force in Fengyun Mountain. Not long ago, the Man League had sent out a message to gather all the forces in Fengyun Mountain. They would gather at the peak of Fengyun Mountain in 7 days to discuss important matters. Looks like the Man League is ambitious. They want to occupy Fengyun Mountain and become the mountain master. Lu Ming sneered. There were a total of 13 famed mountains in this world. 11 of them were unified and each of them was occupied by a powerful force. Only 2 famed mountains were in a state of chaos. Forces of all sizes were fighting for supremacy and it was a mess. Obviously, the Man League wanted to occupy and unify Fengyun Mountain. It's time to go out for a walk, Lu Ming muttered to himself. He then stood up and walked out. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. There was a large piece of land at the peak of Fengyun Mountain. It was wide and flat, suitable for gatherings. It could easily accommodate millions of people. On this day, the peak of Fengyun Mountain was crowded with people. All the forces in the eastern, southern, and northern regions of Fengyun Mountain had gathered. They were divided into different forces and stood at various spots on the peak. The Dragon League was naturally here as well. At the front of the Dragon League, Lu Ming was wearing a black robe that covered his entire body. Thick devil chi emanated from his body and shrouded him, preventing others from using their spiritual consciousness to probe him. All these years, the Man League had not attacked the Dragon League. Obviously, they did not know that the leader of the Dragon League was Lu Ming. After all, the Dragon League had only occupied the former territory of the Cloud Sky League and had not continued to expand. Since the Man League was focused on the western region, it was normal that they did not know. Chapter 34:19. There were more than 10 forces in the east, south, and north of Fengyun Mountain. All of them were silent and solemn as they waited. They are here. Suddenly, someone spoke. Everyone's gaze turned to the west. Over there, several figures were flying over. It's the barbarian tribe. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. There were a few thousand people flying towards them from the west. Among them, there were a few hundred who were tall and burly. They were wrapped in beast skins and there were some who were old and some who were young. They were from the barbarian tribe. As for the rest, they were obviously subdued by the barbarian tribe and had joined them. Soon, the people from the Barbarian Alliance arrived and landed. Ha ha ha, looks like you're on time. There was a loud laugh from the barbarian tribe. An unusually tall and burly young man stepped out and his voice reverberated throughout the area. Man Ku. Lu Ming squinted his eyes. That person was the peerless genius of the barbarian tribe, Man Ku. Previously, he had been tricked by Lu Ming and was severely injured by Lu Ming's array. Unfortunately, Lu Ming still managed to escape. Since then, Lu Ming had never seen Man Ku again. Man Ku, why did you call us here? At that moment, a young man asked loudly. He was the leader of one of the forces in the north. Looks like everyone is here. Since everyone is here, I'll get straight to the point. Man Ku scanned the area and said, Fengyun Mountain has been in chaos for many years and there are constant disputes between the forces. This has hindered the development of Fengyun Mountain. Therefore, I feel that it's time to end this chaos. The unification of Fengyun Mountain is the way to go. As expected, Man Ku's words caused many people's hearts to tremble. Many leaders' eyes flashed with light. Ha ha ha, unification of Fengyun Mountain? What a joke. Let me ask you, who will be in charge of Fengyun Mountain? How will the primordial divine crystals be distributed? A cold voice came from the east. It was Bing Tong. Man Ku looked towards the east and said, the strongest force will be in charge. As for the distribution, it's simple. We'll distribute it the same way as the other famous mountains. Haha. Many of the leaders sneered. Wasn't the strongest force the Barbarian Alliance? Furthermore, it would be distributed like the other unified famed mountains. In the other unified famed mountains, the strongest person was called the Mountain Lord. Below him were a few deputy mountain lords. These people stood at the pinnacle. Most of the primordial divine crystals were divided among them. Below them, there were also some powerful cadres. However, these people received fewer primordial divine crystals. If Foamune Mountain was the same as the other famed mountains, then most of the benefits would be taken by the Mountain Lord. How could the leaders of these forces agree to it? They originally had a lot of income every year, but now it was all gone. Haha, Man-Ku, have you finally revealed your ambition? If you want to be the master of Foamune Mountain, just say it. Bing Tong mocked. So what if I am? Now that the Barbarian Alliance is the strongest, it is only right for us to unify the Foamune Mountain, Man-Ku said coldly, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Since the Barbarian Alliance wants to unify the Foamune Mountain, please forgive us for not accompanying you. Bing Tong said coldly. The Sky Heart Alliance will not accompany you. Goodbye, Liu Tianxin said. After she finished speaking, she wanted to leave with her people. If you want to leave, then leave thoroughly. Get out of Foamune Mountain. Otherwise, I will kill you. Man-Ku's cold voice resounded. Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin froze and stopped in their tracks. Man-Ku, don't be too overbearing. Do you really think that you are the master of Foamune Mountain? Let me tell you, with the strength of the Barbarian Alliance and Man-Ku, it is not enough to unify the Foamune Mountain. Bing Tong shouted. That's right. If the North, South, and East regions work together, we will be able to destroy the Barbarian Alliance, Liu Tianxin added. The leaders of the other forces were also tempted to take action. They were all deep in thought. You are courting death. Man-Ku's eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Boom. He took a step forward and dashed towards Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. Since you are courting death, I will destroy you first. Man-Ku shouted coldly. He clenched his fist and an ancient bronze sword appeared in his hand. This was his origin secret skill. Swoosh. Swoosh. The bronze sword slashed out and two sword radiances slashed towards Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. Don't think that I am afraid of you. Die. Bing Tong shouted. He waved his hand and a shocking blade radiance shot out. At the same time, Liu Tianxin attacked. Her fist shone brightly and a terrifying fist radiance shot up to the sky towards the sword radiance. Boom. 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 Man-Ku's sword radiance was destroyed. However, Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin shuddered and retreated slightly. Barbarian God Sword. Man-Ku shouted as he slashed out with his bronze sword. His swordsmanship was simple and majestic. Every move seemed simple, but it was filled with an ancient feeling. Its power was shocking. This guy's sword skills are stronger than the last time. They seem to have become more mysterious. What is going on? Lu Ming was surprised. He felt that Man-Ku's sword skills had undergone a transformation. For example, his sword skills were incomplete in the past. Now, they were complete and their power had increased. Boom. Boom. The battle between Man-Ku, Bing Tong, and Liu Tianxin was intense. They were all peak divine kings and had awakened their origin divine force for the fourth time. They had all sorts of divine skills and secret skills. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of blows. Man-Ku was powerful. He was able to suppress Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin even though he was fighting against two of them. The other faction leaders' eyes lit up but they did not attack. When the Sandpiper and the Clam fought, the fishermen would benefit. If Man-Ku, Bing Tong, and Liu Tianxin were injured, they would be the ones to benefit. Even if they could not injure each other, they could let Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin test Man-Ku's strength. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged more than 10 blows. Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin were forced to retreat. What? Is this all you've got? You want to fight me? Man-Ku sneered. Roar. At this moment, Bing Tong shouted and used his primordial godly body. His body changed rapidly and turned into a giant centipede. His legs were like divine blades as he flew towards Man-Ku. At the same time, Liu Tianxin unleashed her primordial divine body and attacked Man-Ku with all her might. Are you finally going to use your trump card? However, you are overestimating yourself if you want to compete with me in terms of the primordial divine body, Man-Ku said indifferently with a mocking smile on his face. Following that, he let out a loud roar as his body swelled up and rapidly grew bigger. In an instant, He was 10,000 meters tall. However, that was not the end. His body continued to grow until he was 100,000 meters tall. 100,000 meters. Oh my God, it is the 8th transformation of the primordial divine body. Oh no, Man-Ku's primordial divine body has reached the 8th transformation. Chapter 34:20. Clang clang clang. At this moment, the divine sabers formed by the centipede legs slashed Man-Ku's body. However, the sound of metal clashing rang out, and sparks flew everywhere. Then, the divine sabers were all sent flying back. However, only a few shallow marks were left on his body. That is, Lu Ming's pupils shrank. Without a doubt, Man-Ku was using the barbarian god physique. Lu Ming had seen him use it before. However, the last time he used it, it was far from this size. It was only 1,000 meters tall. Now, it had grown to 100,000 meters tall. Moreover, the stone armor on his body was crystal clear and looked like it was made of crystal. It gave off a feeling that it was indestructible. The divine saber formed by the soldiers, I could only leave a shallow mark on it. Then, Lu Ming thought of the other people's exclamations. The 8th transformation of the primordial divine body. What did that mean? It was obvious that the ancient god body was of a higher level than the purple-armored ancient god body. For a moment, thoughts flashed through Lu Ming's mind. At this moment, Man-Ku laughed maniacally. My barbarian god body has already reached the peak of the 8th transformation. You haven't even reached the 8th transformation. You want to fight me? Go die. Man-Ku laughed. Although he was huge, he was extremely agile. He waved his bronze battle sword and charged towards Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin were shocked. They roared and unleashed their strongest attacks. The terrifying fist energy and the resplendent divine saber pierced through the air towards Man-Ku. However, Man-Ku didn't care about this and allowed their attacks to land on his body. Boom boom boom. Man-Ku's body only swayed slightly. There were only some marks on his stone armor, but it didn't break at all. You want to break my barbarian god body? You're still a little lacking. Die. Man-Ku roared and slashed down with his bronze sword. Not good, retreat. Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin's faces changed as they quickly retreated. But it was too late. The bronze sword flashed and slashed at the giant centipede that was transformed from Soldier Eye. A section of the giant centipede's tail was chopped off. Bing Tong screamed as his body began to shrink rapidly. What a powerful attack! Lu Ming's eyes flashed. The centipede's defensive power was shocking, but it was unable to block Man-Ku's sword. Man-Ku's strength was far above the weapon pupil. The soldier pupil was severely wounded, and it was hard for him to maintain his primitive divine body. Die! Man-Ku shouted as he stomped down on Bing Tong. Man-Ku's body was gigantic. He was 100,000 meters tall, while Bing Tong's body was shrinking. Compared to Man-Ku, Bing Tong was like a small worm. No, save me, Bing Tong screamed in fear. However, Liu Tianxin couldn't save him at all. He couldn't even protect himself, so he quickly retreated. You want to leave? Stay. Man-Ku waved his huge sword, which covered the sky. It turned into a huge sword image that shot towards Liu Tianxin, cutting off her escape route. Liu Tianxin could only try her best to resist. Man-Ku's foot had already landed. Bing Tong was unwilling to give up and tried his best to resist. However, he was severely injured and could not break through Man-Ku's defense. Boom! Finally, Man-Ku's foot landed heavily on the ground. Bing Tong was under his foot, and he landed heavily on the ground. The ground shook violently, and a huge crater appeared. Soldier pupil is dead, someone said in a hoarse voice. That was because they could feel that soldier pupil's life force had completely disappeared. Soldier pupil was stomped to death by Man-Ku's foot. At that moment, Liu Tianxin was no match for Man-Ku. She was forced to retreat and coughed out blood. There was a deep sword wound on her body, and she was bleeding profusely. I surrender. I'm willing to surrender. Liu Tianxin shouted in fear. If this continued, he would end up like soldier pupil. It's too late to surrender now. Die in peace. Man-Ku shouted as his attacks became more aggressive. He waved his sword with his right hand and punched with his left. He launched a barrage of attacks. Everyone, let's attack together. If he kills me, he won't let any of you go. Unless all of you surrender, Liu Tianxin shouted. He wanted to ask the experts from the North and South region to attack. There were experts from the North and South regions who were no weaker than them. They might even be stronger than them. Now, he only had a chance to survive if the other experts attacked him together. However, the experts from the North and South region looked hesitant. Hurry up. Attack. Liu Tianxin shouted crazily. However, in the next moment, he was hit by Man-Ku's fist. He flew out like a cannonball and slammed into a wall. Cracks appeared on the hard wall. Everyone, let's attack. Otherwise, there will be no place for us in Fengyun Mountain. At that moment, a young man from the South region said. This person was an overlord from the South region. He was extremely powerful, and his name was Fu Xiu. Attack. Man-Ku's primordial divine body has reached the peak of the 8th transformation. He specializes in defense and his defense is invincible. With our strength, I'm afraid it will be difficult to break his defense. If we can't break his defense, we won't be able to defeat him, another leader of the forces said. It's easy to break through his defense. You just need to have a corresponding attack power. For example, if your primordial divine body has reached the 8th transformation and you have an origin secret technique that's good at attacking, you can break through his defense. Fu Xiu said. Primordial divine body 8th transformation? Have you made a breakthrough? The face of the other leader changed abruptly as he looked at Fu Xiu in shock. Fu Xiu nodded silently and said, let's attack. Alright, let's attack together and kill Man-Ku. Let's join forces. The leaders of the other factions also voiced their opinions. Man-Ku was aware of this. His expression changed slightly as he uttered a roar, kill. The giant bronze sword slashed at Liu Tianxin. No. Liu Tianxin screamed in horror. Seeing that he could not withstand the attack, his body quickly shrank to his normal size. He wanted to use his small body to dodge the attack. However, Man-Ku's sword light had completely enveloped the area and locked onto him. There was no way he could escape. Boom! The huge bronze battle sword smashed down, and Liu Tianxin let out an unwilling scream. Her body exploded, and her soul was destroyed. In the Fengyun Mountain East region, the two overlords, Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin, were killed. At that moment, Fu Xiu and the other 4 experts dashed toward Man-Ku. 5 streams of light tore through the void and charged toward Man-Ku. There was no doubt that those who dared to attack Man-Ku were top experts. They were all peak supreme beings and their origin divine power factors had all awakened 4 times. Their strength was no weaker than Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin. Chapter 34-21. The 5 experts attacked Man-Ku at the same time. Each of their attacks could easily kill a large number of ordinary peak divine kings. Swoosh! At the critical moment, Man-Ku swung his sword horizontally. The sword light was like a rainbow, covering the sky as it chopped down on the 5 attacks. 5 consecutive huge explosions rang out. All 5 attacks were blocked by Man-Ku. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wishes. Man-Ku looked at Fu Xiu and the others with a ferocious expression. Man-Ku, although you are strong, you are not invincible in the Divine King realm, Fu Xiu said calmly. However, his aura was getting stronger. Roar. Suddenly, Fu Xiu let out a roar and his body swelled rapidly. He turned into a rhinoceros. The rhinoceros was covered in black scales and had a pair of wings. There was a horn on its head that was as sharp as a heavenly blade. The rhinoceros was huge. It did not stop growing even when it was 10,000 meters tall. In the end, it was at least 50,000 meters tall and 100,000 meters long. It was even bigger than Man-Ku when it spread its wings. The 8th transformation of the primordial divine body. Your primordial divine body has reached the 8th transformation. Man-Ku's expression changed drastically as he exclaimed. Man-Ku, you are not the only one who has reached the 8th transformation. I have reached the 8th transformation as well. I can break through your barbarian divine body. Fu Xiu's voice came from the rhinoceros. The horn on his head shone brightly and emitted a terrifying aura. At the same time, a bronze blade appeared and merged with the horn on his head. The blade was Fu Xiu's origin secret technique. You are only at the middle stage of the 8th transformation. Do you think you can fight me? Man Ku shouted. You can do it with us. Another young man said. He finally had some confidence after seeing Fu Xiu's primordial divine body. Then let's try. Man Ku shouted and swung his bronze sword at Fu Xiu and the other 4. The 4 of you restrain him. I will be the main attacker and break through his defense. Fu Xiu sent a message to the other 4 young men. As soon as he finished speaking, he flapped his wings and flew out. His horn shone brightly and combined with his origin secret technique, it made his body look like a war blade. He pierced through the air and charged at Man Ku. Die. Man Ku brandished his bronze greatsword and chopped down. Clang. The giant bronze sword collided with Fu Xiu's horn, resulting in an earth-shattering roar. Boundless energy swept out in all directions, leaving terrifying sword and saber scars on the ground of Fengyun Peak. Retreat. The other people at the scene didn't dare to stay. They all stayed far away. Lu Ming brought the Dragon Alliance members and retreated far away, maintaining a distance from the battlefield. Attack. At this moment, the other 4 top experts also took action. They turned into their original divine bodies and dashed toward Man Ku. One of them actually turned into an incomparably huge spider, but it had 18 claws. It opened its mouth and a huge spider web flew out, enveloping Man Ku. There was also a young man who had transformed into a giant snake with a human face and a snake body. He opened his mouth and spat out a poisonous mist. When heaven and earth were first created, many primitive divine spirits were born. These primitive divine spirits came in all shapes and sizes. Many of them were even the ancestors of the various races. Therefore, the primitive divine bodies that were cultivated came in all shapes and sizes. These 4 young experts were also the leaders of their respective forces. In Fengyun Peak, they were as famous as Bing Tong and Liu Qianxian. Their primitive divine bodies were also existences who were about to enter the 8th transformation. Their combat strength was not weak at all. The 4 of them joined forces, not to attack but to trap Man Ku. They used all kinds of methods to envelop him. Break. Man Ku blocked Fu Xiu's attack and swung his sword horizontally, trying to break out of the encirclement of the 4 experts. However, the 4 experts flashed and dodged Man Ku's attack. Then, they used all kinds of methods to attack Man Ku, hoping to trap him. For a moment, Man Ku was somewhat affected and his movements slowed down. For example, the snake venom was extremely terrifying and could paralyze the nerves. The spider web was extremely tough. When Man Ku swung his sword, it didn't immediately unravel. Instead, it almost entangled him. Fu Xiu wouldn't miss this opportunity. He flapped his wings and charged toward Man Ku. Clang. Fu Xiu's head collided with Man Ku's body, making an ear-piercing sound. The crystal-like stone armor on Man Ku's body trembled violently. In the next moment, a crack was heard, and the stone armor cracked. Fu Xiu's horn pierced through it. Man Ku let out a roar and took a few steps back. Then, he threw a punch at Fu Xiu, knocking him back. However, a bloody hole still appeared on Man Ku's body, and blood kept flowing out. It's broken. The other 4 young experts were overjoyed when they saw this. Fu Xiu was indeed able to break through Man Ku's defense. As long as he could break through Man Ku's defense, it would be easy to kill him. Attack with all your might. The other 4 young geniuses used their full strength, using all sorts of entrapment techniques to surround Man Ku. Man Ku tried his best to break free, but it was difficult for him to do so. His movements were greatly affected. On the other side, Fu Xiu launched another attack. His body was like a huge sharp knife, crashing into Fu Xiu's body. Fu Xiu roared angrily. His stone armor was broken again, and a deep wound appeared. His flesh and bones were exposed, and blood kept flowing out. Man Ku let out a painful roar that was as loud as thunder. Don't you dare hurt young Master Man Ku. If you want to win by numbers, We'll be your opponents. Angry roars were heard. Then, a dozen figures pounced on Fu Xiu and the others like lightning. These were a dozen old barbarians. They were very old and did not have much lifespan left. They were all skin and bones, but they were very strong. Each of them was a peak divine king who had awakened their origin divine power factor 3 times. When Lu Ming first entered this world, he had suffered at the hands of these old barbarians. These old barbarians saw that Man Ku was no match for them and immediately rushed out. You're courting death. You guys continue to trap him. Leave these old guys to me. Fu Xiu's voice was heard. His eyes flashed with a cold light. He flapped his wings and rushed out, making a terrifying whistling sound. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The next moment, from the top of Fu Xiu's head, rays of saber light burst out and slashed at the old barbarians. The saber light whistled at an astonishing speed. The old barbarian who was flying at the front was the first to bear the brunt. Break! The old barbarian roared. He held a giant axe and swung it, trying to break the saber light. However, when the axe hit the saber light, his face changed drastically. He saw that the battle axe in his hand had shattered. The saber light flashed and cut the old barbarian in half, killing him instantly. Chapter 34-22. The other blade lights did not stop and continued to attack the other old barbarians. Puff puff puff, blood flashed, and the blade flashed. 5 to 6 old barbarians were cut in half and died on the spot. Not good, retreat. The expressions of the remaining old berserkers changed drastically. They retreated madly, then gathered together to form a rune to fend off Fu Xiu. It's too late to retreat now. Kill. Fu Xiu's cold voice rang out. He flapped his wings and his gigantic body turned into a gigantic blade. He charged towards the old berserkers and crashed into the rune they had set up. A dazzling light shot up into the sky, followed by a loud bang. There was a huge explosion, followed by screams of pain. When the light and screams disappeared, only Fu Xiu was left in the sky, and the old barbarians had disappeared without a trace. A bunch of old fogies who overestimate themselves, Fu Xiu said coldly. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air, especially the barbarians. Their faces were ugly, but they were secretly shocked. Fu Xiu's strength was indeed terrifying. Those old brute tribesmen could be said to be very powerful. Their divine origin force had been awakened for the 3rd time, and their lifespan was not long. They had cultivated for 5 full stellar years, and the power of their various divine skills was extremely terrifying. Their combat strength was almost at the peak of the divine king realm. However, there was still a huge gap between them and a terrifying heaven's pride like Fu Xiu. They couldn't compete at all. In just a few breaths, a dozen powerful barbarian elders were all killed. Fu Xiu, I want you dead. At this moment, Man Ku let out a furious roar. His body glowed, and he seized the opportunity to madly swing his bronze sword. In an instant, he had slashed out over 1,000 times. The attacks of the 4 experts finally cracked open a crack, and Man Ku burst out. Don't let him escape. Quick, surround him. The 4 young experts shouted. Their figures flashed, and all kinds of entrapment attacks were launched. At the same time, Fu Xiu also rushed towards Man Ku. However, at this moment, a malevolent expression appeared in Man Ku's eyes. He opened his mouth and a snow-white bone flew out from his mouth. That's right, it was a bone. As soon as the bone flew out, a terrifying aura spread out. Roar. In the next moment, a terrifying roar came from one of the snow-white bones. The loud roar turned into a mysterious aura that spread in all directions. Fu Xiu and the 4 geniuses were the first to bear the brunt of this aura. Immediately, their bodies stiffened, and then they revealed looks of pain. All of their attacks stopped in an instant. That loud roar quickly spread into the distance. Many people were enveloped by it. Some people's expressions changed drastically, and some people with lower cultivation levels let out miserable screams. Their faces were filled with pain. It's a soul attack. Get back. Lu Ming's expression changed. He could clearly feel that when that aura passed through his body, it turned into a strange energy that rushed towards his soul. However, His soul was protected by the frightening feather painting, which blocked this energy. But the other members of Dragon Alliance couldn't. Some of them revealed pained expressions and some of them cried out. Hearing Lu Ming's words, they quickly retreated and distanced themselves from him. The others were the same, retreating frantically. The further away they were, the greater the impact. One could imagine how much Fu Xiu and the other 4 young experts had been affected by it. Kill. Man Ku roared as he swung his bronze sword at Fu Xiu. Not good. Fu Xiu was shocked. At the critical moment, he used all his strength to move sideways, but he was still a step too late. One of his wings was cut off by the bronze sword, and blood stained the sky. Fu Xiu was shocked and wanted to retreat. But the white bone that Man Ku used let out a loud roar, and a strange energy spread out, causing Fu Xiu's body to stiffen and his movements to slow down. Soul attack. Lu Ming squinted his eyes slightly. This white bone could affect the soul. It was extremely terrifying. In a battle between experts, a small difference could lead to a huge difference. Although Fu Xiu and the others were only slightly affected, the outcome of the battle could be worlds apart. Where did this Man Ku get this treasure? Did he have a fortuitous encounter recently? Lu Ming's mind raced as he was filled with doubts. The last time he saw Man Ku, his barbarian god body wasn't even at the purple-armored ancient god body. At most, it was at the peak of the blue-armored ancient god body. Moreover, Man Ku definitely didn't have the white bone. Otherwise, he would have used it when Lu Ming forced him into a desperate situation by borrowing the power of the array. But this time, not only did Man Ku have the white bone, but his primordial ancient god body had also surpassed the purple-armored ancient god body and reached the next level. Moreover, it had reached the peak of the next level, and his combat strength had increased by a large margin. Aside from a fortuitous encounter, it was hard to explain. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Lu Ming's mind, but the battle on the battlefield was still ongoing. Man Ku used the white bone to affect Fu Xiu, and then continued to slash with the bronze sword. Roar. Fu Xiu roared, trying his best to control himself to resist Man Ku. At the same time, the other 4 young experts also attacked. However, their souls were affected by the white bone, and their strength was still affected. Their combat strength was weaker, and their speed was also slower. In an instant, Man Ku and Fu Xiu exchanged a few moves. Fu Xiu was no match for Man Ku, and his body was slashed by the bronze sword. A sword wound that was a few hundred meters long appeared on his body, and Fu Xiu's head was almost cut off. Fu Xiu was severely injured, and he coughed up blood and retreated. The other 4 young experts wanted to trap Man Ku again, but Man Ku had already escaped from the encirclement. Moreover, he had the white bone's help, and it was easy for him to escape from the encirclement, and he continued to attack Fu Xiu. Barbaric god sword, bloody killing god. Man Ku roared, and the dazzling sword light completely enveloped Fu Xiu. Fu Xiu tried his best, and the horn on his head flew out to attack Man Ku, but he was sent flying by Man Ku's sword. Ah! In the end, Fu Xiu let out a shrill scream as his neck was slashed by the bronze sword, and his huge head flew out. Then, the sky full of sword light fell, and Fu Xiu's head was smashed into pieces. Fu Xiu had fallen. Not good. The other 4 experts were shocked when they saw Fu Xiu's tragic death, and they quickly retreated. It's too late to retreat now. Man Ku's cold voice resounded throughout the battlefield, and he strode forward, attacking the 4 experts. Roar! The white bone floated above Man Ku's head, and it kept roaring. The roar had no effect on Man Ku, but it had a huge impact on the others. The 4 young experts had to use a lot of energy to protect their souls, and in this way, their strength would be greatly reduced. Man Ku caught up with the 4 of them in an instant, and the bronze sword turned into a sky full of sword light, and violently slashed at the 4 young experts. The 4 experts joined forces to resist. Originally, with their strength, if they joined forces, they could resist for a while, but now that they were affected by the white bone, it was difficult. Chapter 34-23. The 4 young experts barely managed to block more than 10 moves before one of them was almost cut in half by the battle sword. He retreated frantically and was severely injured. Since one of them was severely injured, the remaining 3 were even weaker. Not long after, all of them were severely injured. Time to send you on your way. Man Ku's eyes were extremely ferocious. As for the spectators, they were all sighing. It seemed that the chaotic situation in Foamune Mountain was finally coming to an end. It was going to be unified. Man Ku had suppressed the crowd. The outcome was set. Especially those from the Dragon Alliance, their eyes were filled with unwillingness. They had followed Lu Ming and lived a good life. If Foamune Mountain were to be unified, how could those who followed the barbarian tribe be treated so well? However, the current situation was almost certain. Man Ku was too strong and the other experts could not resist him. The outcome of resisting was too tragic. Bing Tong, Liu Tianxin, and Fu Xiu were killed one after another. The remaining 4 experts could not even protect themselves. Although Lu Ming was strong, he was still not as strong as Man Ku. Just as everyone was sighing, Man Ku launched a violent attack. The 4 experts were beaten back and vomited blood. Their injuries were even more serious. It seemed that defeat was only a matter of time. I surrender. I'm willing to submit to you and manage Foamune Mountain with you. I'll be your deputy. At that moment, a young man shouted. You're about to die and you want to be the deputy? You must be dreaming. Man Ku sneered and rejected him directly. Then I don't want to be the deputy, the young man shouted. If you want to stay alive, I'll give you a chance. Surrender and swear on your life origin that you'll listen to my orders. Not only in this world, but when you return to the Eldritch universe, you'll listen to my orders for the rest of your life. Man Ku said ferociously. What? You? Don't go overboard. I can listen to your orders in this world, but not in the Eldritch universe. The young man shouted. He was a peerless genius and came from a powerful force in the Eldritch universe. His future was bright. He could listen to Man Ku's orders for a short period of time in this world, but how could he listen to Man Ku for the rest of his life? If you don't agree, then die. Man Ku shouted coldly and slashed out his battle sword, cutting off one of the young man's arms. Then, the sword light slashed horizontally, wanting to kill the young man. I surrender, I surrender. The young man roared. Under the threat of death, he chose to surrender. Even though he was unwilling to be controlled by the other party for the rest of his life, there was nothing he could do if he were to die. Take this with you first. Swear it later. A headband appeared in Man Ku's hand, and he tossed it to the other party. The young man caught the headband, and his expression changed. He was extremely unwilling, but when he felt the intense killing intent from Man Ku, he finally compromised. Gritting his teeth, he put on the headband. From now on, his life and death would be in Man Ku's hands. What about you guys? Following which, Man Ku's gaze turned towards the remaining 3 youths. As of this moment, the 3 young men were seriously injured and unable to fight. Man Ku wasn't in a hurry to attack them. He wanted to subjugate them one by one, which would be very useful to him when he returned to the Your Wilds universe. How foolish. Lu Ming shook his head in his heart and secretly sneered. This Man Ku must have been blinded by his victory. Making these geniuses swear on their life source to be loyal to him was simply courting death. These geniuses came from the major forces in the Your Wilds universe. Some of them were even stronger than the Taishu dynasty or the barbarian tribe. The prodigies of that faction had sworn to be loyal to Man Ku forever. If the powerhouses of that faction were to find out about this in the future, they would probably fly into a rage and kill Man Ku in the dark. Once Man Ku was dead, the oath would naturally be useless. This was also the reason why most people in this world wouldn't make others swear on their life source. However, Man Ku didn't think too much about it. He had been blinded by his victory. The remaining 3 youths' faces were extremely ugly. Since you don't want to talk, I'll send you to hell together. Man Ku's killing intent exploded. Alright, I promise you, I promise. In the end, one of the youths shouted and surrendered to Man Ku's threat. Put it on. Man Ku took out a headband and tossed it to the youth. The youth caught it and put it on his head. What about the 2 of you? Following which, Man Ku looked at the remaining 2 people. You want me to listen to your orders for the rest of my life? Dream on. What's the difference between that and a puppet? You might as well kill me. One of the youths shouted coldly. That's right. Do it. You want me to submit to you for the rest of my life? Impossible. You're not qualified. The second youth shouted. Not everyone had a backbone. These two youths had a strong sense of pride and backbone. They would rather die than submit. Since that's the case, I'll send you to hell. Man Ku's eyes flashed coldly. His aura exploded and he was about to attack. It's time to strike. At this moment, Lu Ming said in a low voice. After the chaotic battle, the situation in Fengyun Mountain had changed drastically. It was time to strike. Moreover, Man Ku had used up most of his trump cards. Lu Ming was more or less prepared. Lu Ming stepped out and walked towards Man Ku. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. Now, there was still someone who dared to step out. What was he trying to do? Alliance leader. The members of the Dragon Alliance were also shocked. Their eyes flickered. What is he trying to do? The same thought crossed the minds of the others. Man Ku and the other two youths also looked at Lu Ming. Kid, show your true face. Don't hide your head and tail. Man Ku shouted coldly. Man Ku, it's been a while. How have you been? Lu Ming smiled. He waved his hand and took off the black robe on his body, revealing his true face. It's you, Lu Ming. Man Ku exclaimed when he saw Lu Ming. Then, he emitted a cold murderous intent. Man Ku, it's been a while since we last met. Your cultivation has improved a lot. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Lu Ming, you still dare to attack after seeing my strength. Today will be the day you die. Man Ku roared. His powerful aura shrouded Lu Ming. He ignored the other two youths. In comparison, he wanted to kill Lu Ming more. After all, Lu Ming was a genius of the Taishu dynasty. The Taishu dynasty and the barbarian tribe were mortal enemies. Man Ku wanted to kill Lu Ming. Lu Ming was not afraid at all. He stepped forward and landed in front of the other two youths. His body also emitted a powerful aura. Is this person really going to fight with Man Ku? Who is this person? Many people were shocked. I know. This person is the alliance leader of the Dragon Alliance. I heard that he is extremely powerful. He fought Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin to a draw. Someone recognized Lu Ming. It's the alliance leader of the Dragon Alliance. Many people suddenly realized. After all, the battle between Lu Ming and Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin had spread throughout Fengyun Mountain. Chapter 34-24. Lu Ming and Man Ku stood facing each other as their auras clashed. Roar. Lu Ming let out the ancient god's roar. Then, his body expanded rapidly and transformed into a purple-armored ancient god. Lu Ming had already reached the pinnacle of the purple-armored ancient god body. Although he was still 10,000 meters tall, his body was covered in dark purple scales that shone brightly. However, the difference between 10,000 meters and Man Ku's 100,000 meters was still too big. So you've already reached the pinnacle of the seventh transformation of the ancient god body. However, you're too naive if you think you can fight me with that. I'll send you on your way. Man Ku sneered as he looked down at Lu Ming. He lifted his foot and stomped down on Lu Ming, wanting to stomp Lu Ming to death. Come on. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with battle intent as his body glowed with divine light. At this moment, Lu Ming exploded with all his strength. The battle character art increased his combat strength by 5 times and the 11 types of divine powers circulated as he threw out a punch. Boom. When the punch landed on Man Ku's foot, there was a loud explosion. Lu Ming felt as if he had hit a mountain as a terrifying pressure pressed down on Lu Ming. Lu Ming's body shook violently and he retreated continuously. His arm felt numb. If not for the fact that he had cultivated the heavenly fiend golden body and had a strong physical body, he would have exploded. However, Lu Ming managed to block Man Ku's kick. You're quite strong. Man Ku's eyes flashed with surprise. He had not expected that Lu Ming would be able to block his attack with his current strength. Kid, let's see how many moves you can take. Man Ku bellowed as he slashed down with his bronze sword. A terrifying sword gleam whistled as it exploded with a terrifying roar. The berserk sword pressure pressed down on Lu Ming from all directions. Tyrannical divine spear, gate of domination, void-shattering sword, Lu Ming let out a long howl. He used all kinds of origin secret techniques, which expanded rapidly and blasted toward Man Ku. Clang! The void-breaking sword was the fastest, and it collided with the opponent's bronze battle sword. A loud sound rang out, and the void-breaking sword trembled violently before it was sent flying. Next, the bronze battle sword slashed at the ruler's gate, and the ruler's gate was sent flying as well. In the end, it collided with the tyrant god spear. Wang! The tyrant god spear violently trembled as a terrifying power passed through the tyrant god spear and entered Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming continuously retreated as he felt his blood and qi churn as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The ancient cultivation method is indeed powerful. I will definitely kill you today, Man Ku shouted coldly. His killing intent became even colder. The stronger Lu Ming was, the stronger his killing intent was. The bronze sword turned into thousands of rays of light, slashing towards Lu Ming. This fellow's strength is indeed formidable. If I were to rely on my own strength, I would definitely be no match for him. Lu Ming sighed in his heart. In comparison, Man Ku was far superior to Lu Ming in many aspects. For example, the primordial divine body had already reached the peak of the 8th transformation. On the other hand, Lu Ming's purple-armored ancient divine body was only at the peak of the 7th transformation. There was an entire level difference. In terms of divine power of origin, Man Ku had awakened 4 times and his cultivation was at the peak of the divine king realm. He was 2 levels higher than Lu Ming. What Lu Ming could rely on was the battle character art and the universe myriad Dao Art's 11 types of divine power and various secret techniques of origin. However, these were not enough to close the gap between them. Now, he could only join forces with Chocho. Chocho, with a thought, Chocho wriggled rapidly and turned into an armor that covered Lu Ming's body. At the same time, bolts of lightning covered Lu Ming's body. A metallic life form? Do you think you can fight me with just a metallic life form? Kill both of you. Man Ku shouted coldly. He was very confident as he slashed down with his bronze sword again. Fight. Lu Ming held the tyrant god spear in one hand and the gate of domination in the other. He soared into the sky and continuously attacked Man Ku. Boom. 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 The two of them clashed continuously and exchanged more than 10 moves in an instant. For a moment, there was no clear victor. Lu Ming can actually fight Man Ku? He blocked Man Ku's attack in a head-on confrontation? Many people were shocked and found it hard to believe. They had seen how strong Man Ku was previously. He had killed many top heavens prides consecutively and could be said to be incomparably violent and invincible. Right now, Lu Ming was actually able to fight with Man Ku. This was really incredible. Sizzle, each of Lu Ming's attacks was accompanied by a huge bolt of lightning that poured into Man Ku's body along with his attacks. Man Ku's huge body was covered with lightning. As the lightning attacked, Man Ku's speed slowed down slightly. This was what Lu Ming wanted. Moon of Moon, Sun of Sun. Lu Ming controlled the 2 origin source secret techniques and floated in the air, sprinkling down rays of light that landed on Man Ku's body. He wanted to completely melt him in the rays of light. However, the crystal-like stone armor on Man Ku's body was dazzling. A layer of light appeared and blocked the attacks of the Moon of Moon and Sun of Sunday Clang. Then, Lu Ming broke through Man Ku's attack. The tyrant god spear pierced Man Ku's chest and made a loud sound. Sparks flew in all directions, but it didn't pierce through. It only left a shallow mark on his body. Ha ha ha, even if you add the metallic life form, you can't break through my defense. Man Ku laughed loudly, extremely arrogantly. Lu Ming's face sank and continued to attack. Later, Lu Ming attacked Man Ku several times, but he couldn't break through Man Ku's defense. Ha ha ha, Man Ku laughed even more unscrupulously. He completely ignored his defense and attacked Lu Ming crazily. For a moment, Lu Ming was pressured to retreat continuously. Chocho, Lu Ming transmitted his voice to Chocho. He planned to use the broken sword form. Lu Ming waved his hand and the tyrant god spear disappeared. Then, Cho wriggled and turned into a huge sword that Lu Ming held in his hand. Clang! Lu Ming swung his sword and collided with Man Ku's bronze battle sword. Boundless energy burst out and swept in all directions. However, after Cho turned into this broken sword, its attack power increased to an astonishing level. Man Ku's body shook violently and retreated continuously. Lu Ming seized the opportunity and slashed horizontally with his battle sword, slashing at Man Ku's chest. Sizzle! This time, there was a terrifying sound of friction. Sparks flew in all directions and crystal-like gravel flew everywhere. Impossible! Man Ku's eyes widened as he roared in disbelief. Because he felt that his stone armor was about to be broken. Man Ku suddenly stepped on the ground, causing the ground to shake violently. His huge body retreated rapidly and only stopped after retreating for tens of thousands of meters. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. There was a sword wound on his chest that went straight through the stone armor, revealing his flesh and blood. Blood was flowing out continuously. How is this possible? Man Ku was shocked. His eyes widened. He couldn't believe that his defense had been broken. The barbarian god body was originally good at defense. He had cultivated it to the peak of the 8th transformation. His entire body was covered in crystal armor that was indestructible and couldn't be broken. But now, it was broken by Lu Ming's sword. Blood was flowing out. Chapter 34-25. The defense that Man Ku relied on was broken, and this made him a little frightened. This brat deserves to die. Man Ku roared. His eyes were filled with blood-red light. He opened his mouth and a white bone flew out. It was the white bone that he used to deal with Fu Xiu and the others. When he fought with Lu Ming, he kept it. In his opinion, he didn't need the white bone to deal with Lu Ming. But now, he used it again. Brat, die. Man Ku roared. At the same time, he activated the white bone. Waves of roars came out from the white bone. A mysterious and terrifying energy rushed towards Lu Ming. It then entered Lu Ming's head and rushed towards Lu Ming's soul. Lu Ming seemed to have seen a terrifying barbarian god dashing into his mind, brandishing his combat sword and slashing at his soul, wanting to shatter it. It seemed that Fu Xiu and the others had been attacked like this before. However, when the barbarian god attacked Lu Ming's soul, the Jingyu scroll glowed and a layer of light enveloped Lu Ming's soul. When the barbarian god's battle sword slashed at the light barrier shook, but nothing happened. If it was an ordinary person, they would have to spend a lot of energy to control their soul to dodge. This way, their strength would be greatly affected. However, Lu Ming didn't care at all. Of course, Man Ku didn't know that. He thought that Lu Ming's soul was also greatly affected. His face was ferocious, and his killing intent was cold. He waved his bronze battle sword and rushed towards Lu Ming, slashing down at Lu Ming's head. However, Lu Ming swung his sword and deflected Man Ku's bronze battle sword. Then, the battle sword didn't stop and continued to slash at Man Ku. Sizzle. The battle sword slashed on Man Ku's body, producing a piercing sound. Then, a deep sword wound appeared on Man Ku's stone armor, penetrating his bones. Man Ku roared in pain and retreated. He shouted in disbelief, "Why aren't you affected?" "Petty tricks," Lu Ming said calmly as he continued to swing his sword towards Man Ku. Man Ku didn't believe it. He did his best to control White Bones. White Bones' roars were like thunder, and the soul attack became even stronger. However, Lu Ming had the protection of the frightening feather painting, so he wasn't affected at all. He continued to attack Man Ku. The two exchanged a few more moves, and Man Ku was once again struck by Lu Ming's sword, leaving a sword wound on his body. Although Man Ku circulated his barbarian god physique with all his might, and the crystal armor on his body was wriggling and healing his wounds, his injuries were real. If this continued, he would become weaker and weaker. Man Ku, it seems like you've reached your limit. Lu Ming sneered. Lu Ming, you're relying on a metallic life form. What kind of ability is that? Do you have the ability to fight me fairly? Man Ku roared. A fair fight. Ridiculous. Lu Ming sneered and said, that white bone in your hand is also an external object. Is it fair for you to use it against the enemy? Also, your cultivation is 2 levels higher than mine. Is it fair for you to fight me with a cultivation 2 levels higher? Man Ku's face turned ugly. However, he didn't dare to fight Lu Ming without using the white bone and at the same level as Lu Ming. Although he was strong, Lu Ming was even more abnormal. If they fought at the same level, he would definitely be the one to lose. Brat, don't think you can defeat me. Fuse. Man Ku roared. Then, the white bone emitted a resplendent radiance and rushed into Man Ku's body, fusing with his body. Next, a layer of white bone armor appeared on Man Ku's body, covering his entire body. Clang. Lu Ming slashed his sword on Man Ku's body again, but this time, a terrifying explosion rang out. Man Ku's body was forced back, but Lu Ming didn't manage to break through his defense. It can actually be like this. Lu Ming was stunned. Man Ku fused the white bone into his body, and a layer of white bone armor appeared. It actually increased his defense by a large margin. Even Chocho's battle sword couldn't break through his defense. You want to kill me? Dream on, dream on. Man Ku roared. His gaze was extremely ferocious, and he couldn't wait to tear Lu Ming into pieces. He had to pay a price for fusing with the white bone. Because he could only fuse with the white bone 3 times. After fusing with it 3 times, the white bone would be completely destroyed. Even the ability to affect the soul would disappear. At a critical moment, it could save his life. Unless it was a last resort, he wouldn't use it. But now, because Lu Ming wasted it once, his heart was bleeding. Die for me. Man Ku roared and madly rushed towards Lu Ming, slashing out with his bronze battle sword. However, when Lu Ming swung his sword and clashed with the bronze battle sword, Man Ku's huge body was shaken and he was forced back. Although he had fused with the white bone, it only increased his defense. His combat strength didn't change. After repelling Man Ku, Lu Ming took the opportunity to attack. His sword landed on Man Ku's body again, but it was still blocked. He couldn't break through Man Ku's defense. This guy is like a tortoise shell. His defense is comparable to Dandan's. Lu Ming was speechless as he muttered. Then, he continued to attack. However, every time Man Ku was sent flying by Lu Ming, he couldn't break through his defense. Of course, Man Ku's attack power wasn't enough, and he couldn't cause any harm to Lu Ming. The two of them were in a stalemate. Boom. After another exchange, Man Ku was sent flying for thousands of miles. His expression was ugly. Not good, the time for fusion is almost up. Man Ku was a little anxious. There was a time limit to the fusion of the white bone. Once the time was up, it would disappear. It would be difficult to fuse with it again in a short period of time. However, although he was anxious, he didn't show it on his face. Lu Ming, my divine power is about to run out. At this moment, Chocho was transmitting a message to Lu Ming. His broken sword form consumed a lot of divine power. After a series of attacks, Chocho's divine power was about to run out. Lu Ming's mind raced, but he didn't show it on his face as he stared at Man Ku. However, the two of them didn't attack. They looked at each other from a distance. Kid, you can't break through my defense. Man Ku said savagely. You only know how to hide in your tortoise shell. However, the feeling of hitting a sandbag isn't bad. Lu Ming smiled contemptuously. I'll spare your life today. However, it's useless for you to rely on this metallic life form. When you can't use this metallic life form anymore, it'll be the day you die. Man Ku shouted coldly. Then, he looked at the two youths with headbands on their heads and said, let's go. The two youths were helpless. Then, they shouted, let's go. Man Ku turned around and left. The people of the barbarian tribe and his subordinates all followed him. The two youths under his control also took their men and left with Man Ku. Lu Ming didn't chase after them. At this moment, only about half of the people were left on the mountain peak. Brother Lu, thank you for your help. Of the 4 experts who had surrounded Man Ku, 2 of them hadn't been controlled by Man Ku. Halfway through, They had been saved by Lu Ming. Now, they thanked Lu Ming. Chapter 34-26. What do you plan to do in the future? Lu Ming asked. In the future? The two young men frowned. Now, more than half of Fengyun Mountain is in the hands of the Man Alliance. His ambition will not stop. You should know the consequences. Now, there is only one path in front of you, Lu Ming said plainly. His eyes were glowing and his meaning was self-evident. The two young men looked at each other with a complicated expression. They obviously understood what Lu Ming meant. It was simple. He wanted them to submit to Lu Ming. Now, Fengyun Mountain was divided into two and there were two overlords. They were Man Ku and Lu Ming. If they wanted to establish themselves in Fengyun Mountain, they had to submit to one of them. Do you want me to be direct? Submit to me. I can make you deputy alliance leaders. You don't have to condense divine crystals and you can get a portion of them. How about that? Otherwise, I will have to take action. Lu Ming transmitted his voice to the two young men. Previously, Lu Ming only occupied the territory of the Yuntian Alliance and did not continue to expand. That was because he was not powerful enough and his wings were not strong enough. However, it was different now. His strength was enough to intimidate Fengyun Mountain. These people would either submit to Man Ku, submit to him, or leave Fengyun Mountain. Deputy Alliance Leader. The two young men's eyes lit up. Deputy Alliance leaders did not have to condense origin divine crystals and they could get a portion of it. Although it was not as good as them controlling a territory, it was much better than submitting to Man Ku. Alliance Leader Lu, thank you for saving us. I am willing to submit to Alliance Leader Lu and join the Dragon Alliance. One of the young men suddenly cupped his fist. I am also willing to join the Dragon Alliance. The second young man also cupped his fist and joined the Dragon Alliance. Great. The two of you will be Deputy Alliance leaders after joining the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming was overjoyed but he did not show it on his face. After that, Lu Ming looked at the others. What about you? I believe you have heard of the Dragon Alliance's rules. Join the Dragon Alliance and you can keep 30% of the origin divine crystals you condense. Lu Ming looked at the remaining people. I am willing to join the Dragon Alliance. Me too. The first to agree were the people from the Eastern region. The people from the Soldier Peak Alliance and the Skyheart Alliance agreed without hesitation. Now that Bing Tong and Liu Tianxin were dead, the Soldier Peak Alliance and the Skyheart Alliance had disbanded. They had been eyeing the Dragon Alliance's distribution for a long time. Naturally, they agreed without hesitation. Following that, the other forces in the Eastern region also agreed. The leaders of these forces knew that they couldn't go against the general trend. With Lu Ming's strength, if they didn't agree, they could only leave Fengyun Mountain. If they wanted to stay in Fengyun Mountain, they could only agree. After that, in addition to the forces in the Eastern region, the other regions also agreed. In this way, Lu Ming controlled more than half of Fengyun Mountain's territory. The number of people under him increased rapidly, reaching over 10,000. With so many people, how many primordial divine crystals can we obtain in the future? Lu Ming's eyes lit up. As long as he stayed here for a period of time and stored a large amount of primordial divine crystals, he would have enough resources for a long time in the future. It should be noted that the energy of the star core he obtained back then was almost used up. The energy of the star core could have been used until Lu Ming broke through to the 7th layer of the King God Realm. However, although Lu Ming had broken through to the 7th layer of the King God Realm, he had relied on the energy of the primordial divine crystals to break through. Hence, there was still some energy left in the star core. However, it wasn't enough to support Lu Ming to break through to the 8th layer of the King God Realm. However, with the primordial divine crystals, he wouldn't have to worry about running out of energy. What happened next was simple. Lu Ming started to arrange his men and took over half of Fengyun Mountain's territory. He was in a standoff with the Man Alliance. In the Man Alliance's territory, Man Ku was furious. Lu Ming, damn you! Man Ku roared. Man Ku bellowed furiously. This time, his original plan was to have complete control over Fengyun Mountain. Unfortunately, Lu Ming had appeared out of nowhere and ruined his plan completely. In the end, Lu Ming had benefited from it. Lu Ming controlled more than half of Fengyun Mountain. This made him extremely unhappy. "Humph, you want to share Fengyun Mountain with me? Dream on. Looks like I'll have to ask the Guardian for help," Man Ku muttered. Then, his figure flashed and he left the place. After Lu Ming returned, he continued to cultivate in seclusion. So, the primordial divine body is divided into 9 transformations. The ancient god technique I obtained is indeed incomplete. Lu Ming frowned as he pondered. After the battle with Man Ku ended, he asked around and finally resolved the doubts in his heart. The cultivation of the primordial divine body was divided into 9 transformations. The ancient god technique he obtained was divided into red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple transformations. They were the first to the 7th transformations. Hence, when Lu Ming cultivated the purple armored ancient god body to the peak, he felt that there were more levels and that he hadn't reached the limit. Every breakthrough was a transformation. The primordial divine body would become stronger. This was why it was called the 9 transformations. The 9th transformation wasn't the limit. He could still break through. However, breaking through after the 9th transformation would bring him closer to the level of the primordial divine spirit. It made sense. Even if he cultivated to the 9th transformation, he would still be miles away from the primordial divine spirit's divine body. For example, Man Ku had cultivated to the peak of the 8th transformation and displayed the barbarian divine body. He was 100,000 meters tall. If he cultivated to the 9th transformation, he would only be 1,000,000 meters tall. However, when Lu Ming cultivated under the primordial divine statue, he could see the primordial divine spirits fighting in the galaxy. The fists of the primordial divine spirits were bigger than a planet of life. How big was a planet of life? 1,000,000 meters was countless times smaller than a planet of life. It was like the difference between an ant and a mountain. Hence, the 9th transformation of the primordial divine body was still far from the primordial divine spirit's divine body. "Looks like I have to get the complete version of the ancient god technique as soon as possible," Lu Ming murmured. In this world, there must be others who cultivated the ancient god technique. The complete version would most likely appear. After that, Lu Ming sent out an order to ask the Dragon Alliance if they had the complete version of the ancient god technique. Unfortunately, after some time, they still couldn't find the complete version of the ancient god technique. Lu Ming could only expand his search and purchase the complete version of the ancient god technique from other famous mountains. If he didn't have the complete version of the ancient god technique, his ancient god body would be stuck at the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body. It would be difficult for him to break through. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed since the battle with Man Ku. On this day, Tianxing hurried over to see Lu Ming. "Alliance leader, the Guardian wants to see you," Tianxing reported with a serious expression. "The Guardian?" Lu Ming's eyes flickered. Chapter 34-27. By now, Lu Ming had a better understanding of this world. This world wasn't managed by no one. It was managed by people. The people who managed the place were the protectors. There were a total of 13 guardians. Every famed mountain had a guardian. Of course, the guardians wouldn't show themselves and wouldn't interfere with any fights between forces. No matter how the famed mountains fought, they wouldn't interfere and would let things develop naturally. However, they had to guarantee one thing. It meant that no single power could cross 2 famed mountains. In other words, no matter how strong a force was, they couldn't occupy 2 famed mountains at the same time. They could only occupy 1 famed mountain at most. This was also the reason why Fengyun Mountain still existed. Otherwise, Fengyun Mountain would be in chaos and the other famed mountains would intervene. Fengyun Mountain would have long been occupied by the other famed mountains. After all, some famed mountains were extremely powerful and the masters of the famed mountains were even more unfathomable. In this world, there was a list called the God King list. 30 of the most powerful geniuses were listed on it. These 30 strongest geniuses were almost the strongest in the God King realm. However, no one from Fengyun Mountain was on the list. Even Fu Xiu wasn't on the list. Those who were on the list were mostly from the famed mountains. They were either masters or deputy masters of the famed mountains. However, with the guardians around, no matter how strong the famed mountains were, they couldn't interfere with Fengyun Mountain. This was because the strength of the guardians was above the God King realm. They were Sir Gods. In addition, it was said that there were higher-ups above the guardians. They were called enforcers. It was said that there were a total of 3 enforcers and they were in charge of all the famed mountains. However, they were elusive and rarely seen. Lu Ming was puzzled. He stepped out and came to a protruding peak. A burly middle-aged man stood on the peak with his hands behind his back. Lu Ming greets the Lord Guardian. Lu Ming landed and cupped his fists. You're here. A deep voice rang out, and the Guardian turned around. Seeing the Guardian's appearance, Lu Ming's pupils suddenly constricted, and he was surprised and bewildered. This was because the Guardian's appearance and body shape were too similar to the barbarian tribe. It could be said that he was completely a barbarian tribe member. How could the barbarian race be the guardians of this world? Wait, Mount Barbarian God. Lu Ming's mind raced as he thought of Mount Barbarian God. There was a tunnel within Mount Barbarian God that led to this world. They had entered through Mount Barbarian God. Could it be that this person was really related to the Berserkers? Many thoughts flashed through Lu Ming's mind in an instant. A glint flashed across the Guardian's eyes. He smiled and said, "You can see that I'm related to the barbarian tribe." As expected. Lu Ming's heart trembled. He could only brace himself and cupped his fists. "I wonder why Lord Guardian is looking for me. I've heard about your battle with Man Ku. Your strength is indeed amazing. I've been guarding Fengyun Mountain for many years and have seen countless geniuses. However, it's extremely rare to see someone as strong as you." The Guardian said. "Lord, you're flattering me," Lu Ming said, but he had a bad premonition in his heart. "I've heard that you and Man Ku came from the barbarian tribe's territory together. You entered through the tunnel left behind by the barbarian god." The Guardian continued. Lu Ming didn't know what the Guardian was trying to say, so he could only nod. "Let me tell you something. I'm the descendant of the barbarian god in the barbarian tribe's legend," the Guardian said. Lu Ming's heart trembled. His pupils shrank and the bad premonition grew stronger. The Guardian continued, "The barbarian god in the barbarian tribe's legend is an ancestor of the barbarian tribe. He's also my ancestor. He came here a long time ago, but too much time has passed. My ancestor's lifespan has dried up and he passed away. I've been the Guardian here for a few years. I didn't expect to see someone from the same tribe coming here. Of course, I have to take care of them. Don't you think so?" After saying that, the Guardian stared at Lu Ming, wanting to see Lu Ming's expression. Lu Ming's expression didn't change, but many thoughts were running through his mind. He understood many things now. It turned out that the Guardian was from the same tribe as the barbarian tribe. He could be considered a member of the barbarian tribe. No wonder Man Ku's strength increased tremendously after disappearing for a period of time. Especially his primordial divine body, it increased from the peak of the 6th transformation to the peak of the 8th transformation. It was definitely because of the Guardian that he could improve so quickly. Even the white bone might have been given to him by the Guardian. I'm very satisfied with Man Ku's talent. It's definitely rare in the history of the barbarian tribe. Since he's here, I naturally have to give him a chance so that he can help the barbarian tribe rise in the future and become stronger. Letting him control a famous mountain is a great chance. Do you understand?" The Guardian continued. At the end of his words, his tone became more serious. His eyes shone brightly, and they pierced out like sharp swords. Lu Ming wasn't stupid. He naturally knew what the Guardian meant. He wanted Man Ku to control Fengyun Mountain. Haha. At this moment, Lu Ming suddenly laughed. "What are you laughing at?" The Guardian asked coldly. "If Man Ku wants to control Fengyun Mountain, it's simple. Let him challenge me. If he can defeat me, I'll naturally give up Fengyun Mountain. Otherwise, there's no need to talk about it, Lu Ming said. How could it be so easy for him to hand over Fengyun Mountain? Don't you understand what I mean? The Guardian's face darkened completely, and the coldness in his eyes intensified. So what if I understand, and so what if I don't? If Man Ku wants Fengyun Mountain, he can forget about it, Lu Ming said coldly. Boom. Suddenly, a terrifying aura exploded from the Guardian and pressed down on Lu Ming. It was extremely heavy. Lu Ming's body trembled and he almost knelt down. Roar. Lu Ming let out a furious roar and used all his strength to block off the pressure. However, his body still trembled slightly. Divine Lord. The Guardian's cultivation was definitely a Divine Lord. Moreover, he wasn't an ordinary first or second heaven Divine Lord but someone stronger. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to exert such a terrifying pressure. It seems like you're courting death, the Guardian said coldly. You dare to kill me? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're a Guardian. There are still enforcers above you. The Guardian can't interfere with the internal strife of the various famed mountains. You've already violated the rules. If the enforcers know about this, you'll have to bear the consequences. Moreover, when I came out just now, everyone from the Dragon Alliance came to me to meet the enforcers. If you attack me, I guarantee that the enforcers will know about it. Lu Ming shouted. You! How dare you! The Guardian's murderous intent surged. He hollered coldly and the pressure became stronger. It was as if he was moving mountains and trampling seas, pressing toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming's body trembled as he retreated. He spurted out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. Chapter 34-28. Lu Ming was injured by the Guardian's aura, but his eyes were unyielding. He glared at the Guardian and roared, "The bold ones are openly favoritism and violating the rules." Lu Ming roared fearlessly as he stared at the Guardian. At this moment, he could not back down. The Guardian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He wanted to slap Lu Ming to death, but he did not dare to do so. After all, he could not hide the truth from the masses in this world. Guarding Fengyun Mountain was just a mission. He had to listen to someone else's orders. Gradually, the Guardian retracted his aura and revealed a cold smile. Young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I hope you know what's good for you. With that, the Guardian took a step forward, turned into a stream of light, and left the place. Phew, Lu Ming let out a long breath and realized that he was drenched in cold sweat. Then, Lu Ming frowned. He did not expect the Guardian of Fengyun Mountain to be a descendant of the barbarian tribe's ancestor. Fortunately, the Guardian could not hide the truth from the masses in this world. There were still enforcers behind him. However, Lu Ming felt that this matter would not end so easily. Let's go back first and take one step at a time. The Guardian will not dare to interfere in Fengyun Mountain's matters. At most, he will help Man Ku increase his strength. But as long as my strength continues to increase, there will be nothing to fear. Lu Ming thought for a while before he stepped out and returned to the valley where the Dragon Alliance was. Alliance leader, we have found the ancient god technique. As soon as he returned, a young man smiled and flew forward. This young man was called Bo Yi. He was one of the 4 young experts who fought against Man Ku. Later on, he joined Lu Ming and became one of the 2 vice-alliance leaders of the Dragon Alliance. Bo Yi had been in this world for a long time and had a wide network. Therefore, the search for the ancient god technique was left to Bo Yi. I have found the ancient god technique. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Yes, but the other party wants to meet me personally to negotiate the price, Bo Yi said. Oh, where is he? Lu Ming asked. It's not far away. Alliance Master, follow me. With that, Bo Yi flew off in a certain direction with Lu Ming following closely behind. Along the way, Lu Ming found out that the person selling the ancient god tactics was not from the Fengyun Mountain, but from another famous mountain. Not long after, a young man stood on top of a mountain. Fengyun Mountain was extremely huge. It was actually a huge mountain range. On top of it, there were naturally mountains within mountains. There were high mountains, valleys, and lakes. Then I'll take my leave, Alliance Master. Bo Yi cupped his fists and left. Lu Ming flew up and landed on the mountain peak. Greetings, Alliance Master Lu. When the young man saw Lu Ming, he cupped his fists and said, Brother, you don't have to be so polite. I heard that you have the complete ancient god tactics. Lu Ming asked. That's right. I have the complete ancient god tactics. I can cultivate all the way to the 9th transformation, the peak of the gold-armored ancient god body, the young man said. Gold-armored ancient god body, Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He finally knew what the 9th transformation of the ancient god body was. Give me a price. Lu Ming went straight to the point and asked for the price. I need 5,000 primordial divine crystals, the young man said. 5,000. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. The price was indeed ridiculously high. How precious were primordial divine crystals? When he was at Breeze Mountain, a person could only condense one primordial divine crystal every 10 years. Even on a famous mountain, it was a huge sum. Unless one was the leader of a faction, it would take at least a few thousand years for an ordinary person to condense 5,000 primordial divine crystals. However, Lu Ming had plenty of primordial divine crystals now. He did not care. 5,000 primordial divine crystals is fine. But how do I know if the ancient god body is complete? Or, is it true? Lu Ming said coldly. That's simple. Just take a look. I believe that with your status, you won't cheat me of the ancient god tactic. The young man smiled, then took out an ancient book and threw it to Lu Ming. Lu Ming reached out to take the book and saw the words Ancient God Tactics written on the cover. Lu Ming flipped it open. The first page introduced the grades of the ancient god body. Like other primordial divine bodies, the ancient god body was divided into 9 transformations. According to the color of the scales, it was further divided into 9 grades: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, silver, and gold. After the purple-armored ancient god body, it is the silver-armored ancient god body and gold-armored ancient god body. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and he quickly flipped through it. He did not study it carefully. He just wanted to see if it was real or fake. The first 7 transformations, from the red-armored ancient god body to the purple-armored ancient god body, were exactly the same as Lu Ming's. Lu Ming flipped to the silver-armored ancient god body and gold-armored ancient god body. With Lu Ming's understanding of the ancient god tactics, it was easy for him to tell if it was real or fake. If it was fake, Lu Ming could easily tell. However, after reading it, Lu Ming found that it was real and there was no problem. Okay, I'll take this ancient god tactics. Here are 5,000 primordial divine gems. Lu Ming waved his hand and a storage ring flew out. There were 5,000 primordial divine gems in it. The young man took it and scanned it with his spiritual consciousness. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Alliance Leader Lu. Goodbye." The young man cupped his fists and left. Soon, the young man came to a secret place in Fengyun Mountain. There was a burly figure sitting cross-legged in this place. If Lu Ming were to see this, he would definitely be shocked. This was because this figure was the guardian of the Wind Cloud Mountain. "Greetings, Guardian." The young man saluted the Guardian. "Is it done?" The Guardian opened his eyes and asked. "It's done." Lu Ming didn't suspect anything. The young man replied. "Very good. I just changed the order slightly. He won't be able to see through it." "Hee, go ahead. This is for sure." The Guardian sneered. He waved his hand and a storage ring flew out. The young man was overjoyed. He saluted and left. "Lu Ming, I'll make sure you die a horrible death." The Guardian sneered. Lu Ming was naturally unaware of all this. He returned to his place of seclusion and took out the ancient god tactics. He studied it carefully. After a few days, he had more or less studied it thoroughly and started cultivating. He had already cultivated the purple-armored ancient god body to the peak. If he went one step further, it would be the silver-armored ancient god body, which was the 8th transformation of the primordial divine body. However, it wasn't easy to cultivate from the 7th transformation to the 8th transformation. It was extremely difficult. Even with the primordial divine gems, it was still the same. He needed time to train, and it wasn't something that could be broken through overnight. Otherwise, there wouldn't be only a few people who had reached the 8th transformation among all the Sky Prides in Fengyun Mountain. For example, the leaders of the forces, Bing Tong, Liu Tianxin, and the others had plenty of primordial divine gems. However, the primordial divine body was stuck and couldn't break through to the 8th transformation. It was obvious how difficult it was to break through. Chapter 34-29. In the blink of an eye, a few months had passed. In these months, Lu Ming had been comprehending the ancient god tactic and refining the primordial divine crystal. However, he had not made much progress. Lu Ming was not in a hurry. He knew that haste made waste. He needed to slowly grind. At this time, Lu Ming received news that Man Ku was leading the Man Alliance to attack the Dragon Alliance. They wanted to take over the Dragon Alliance's territory. Man Ku, what the hell are you doing? Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Man Ku could not do anything to him. Why would he attack? Lu Ming did not think too much about it. He ended his seclusion and led the Dragon Alliance to fight. Somewhere in the Wind Cloud Mountain, a large number of geniuses were fighting. Man Ku led a group of people and stood in the air, watching the battle from afar. "They're here," Man Ku whispered. His eyes shone as he looked forward. There, a few streams of light were rushing over. In the next moment, a few figures appeared in the sky. These figures were naturally Lu Ming and the others. "Man Ku, are you looking for a beating again?" Lu Ming shouted coldly when he saw Man Ku. "Ch, shameless boasting. You didn't defeat me last time. If not for that metallic life form, I could have killed you with a flip of my hand." Man Ku snorted. "If we fight at the same level, I can crush you with a finger." Lu Ming's reply made Man Ku's face turn gloomy. However, he sneered and said, "Lu Ming, you want me to fight at the same level? You don't have a chance. However, if you can't make that metallic lifeform help, I will have a chance." After speaking, Man Ku cupped his fists to a black-robed youth beside him and said, "Brother Fang, wait a moment. I'll leave the other party's metallic lifeform to you. Don't worry." The black-robed youth smiled faintly and stepped forward. Lu Ming could not help but look at the black-robed youth. The most eye-catching thing was the snake wrapped around his arm. It was a metallic snake. Its entire body shone with a metallic luster. It was definitely made of metal and not flesh and blood. "Let's see how powerful my gold-devouring demonic snake is," the black-robed young man said coldly. Then, he waved his hand and the metal snake flew out. After flying out, the metal snake madly grew in size until it was tens of thousands of meters long. The giant snake opened its mouth, and a huge mouth appeared. It was like a black hole, emitting a terrifying suction force. Wang, buzz. At this moment, many of the legendary weapons that were being controlled by the geniuses started vibrating violently. What happened? "I can't control my sword." Not good. Those youths cried out in alarm, trying their best to control their divine items. But in the next moment, a shocking scene occurred. Their divine items flew out of their control, flying toward the giant snake's mouth. Then, they all disappeared into the giant snake's mouth. Those who had lost their divine weapons were naturally the prodigies on Lu Ming's side. These people had lost their divine weapons and were shocked. They were careless and were attacked by the people from the Barbarian League. Instantly, more than 10 of them were killed in mid-air. "Retreat!" Lu Ming shouted. When his voice rang out, the people from the Dragon League stopped fighting and retreated. "Ha ha ha, my gold-devouring demonic snake eats metals. It can even swallow a divine weapon in one gulp." The black-robed young man laughed. "It's indeed amazing. It can swallow so many divine weapons in one gulp." Lu Ming's eyes flickered. When Qiu ate divine weapons, it took one bite at a time. But this metal snake had swallowed so many divine weapons in one gulp. Its appetite was really good. "Fang Lin, it's Fang Lin." At this moment, Bo Yi, who was beside Lu Ming, shouted. "Bo Yi, do you know this person?" Lu Ming asked. "I've seen him before. Leader, His name is Fang Lin. He's not from the Fengyun Mountain. He's an expert from another famed mountain, the Qitong Mountain, Bo Yi said. Qitong Mountain? Lu Ming's expression changed. Fang Lin, there are rules in this world. People from different famed mountains can't interfere with each other. He's from the Qitong Mountain. How dare he interfere with the matters of the Fengyun Mountain? He has violated the rules. Bo Yi shouted. When did I violate the rules? I'm good friends with Man Ku. What's wrong with helping him? Besides, I didn't do anything to your people. I brought my gold-devouring demonic snake to look for metals to eat. That's not against the rules, right? Fang Lin sneered. You're being unreasonable. I'm going to report you to the Guardian, Bo Yi shouted. Go ahead. What do I have to fear? Fang Lin sneered. His fearless look made Bo Yi's face turn ugly. Bo Yi, there's no need to say anything more, Lu Ming said. This matter was probably approved by the Guardian. Even if he reported it to the Guardian, it would be useless. Lu Ming, let's settle this today. At this moment, Man Ku shouted and stepped out. His body swelled rapidly as he displayed the barbarian god physique, turning into a 100,000-meter-tall barbarian god. He clenched his fist and a bronze sword appeared. He slashed at Lu Ming. Fight. Lu Ming was fearless. He also displayed the ancient god physique and turned into a 10,000-meter-tall purple-armored ancient god. At the same time, Qiuqiu wriggled rapidly and turned into armor, covering Lu Ming's body. At the same time, Lu Ming's palm wriggled and turned into a huge sword. Lu Ming and Qiuqiu went all out as soon as they struck. Swoosh! The sword slashed out and clashed with Man Ku. There was a loud sound. Man Ku's body trembled and he retreated a few steps. Metal life form. It's really a metal life form. What a powerful metal life form. Little snake, devour him, Fang Lin shouted with a greedy look. Hiss, the gigantic snake let out a hissing sound. It twisted its huge body and charged toward Lu Ming. At the same time, it opened its mouth like a black hole. A powerful suction force shrouded Lu Ming's entire body. Lu Ming was still fine after being enveloped by this suction force. However, Qiuqiu, who was covering him, began to wriggle rapidly. It seemed to be unable to maintain its armor form and was about to return to its original form. It works. Man Ku was delighted. Ha ha ha, such a powerful metal life form. Become my little snake's food. The Gold-Eater demonic snake is the king of metal life forms. Not only can it eat divine artifacts, it can also eat other metal life forms. Fang Lin laughed wildly as if he could see Qiuqiu being eaten. Moreover, after eating Qiuqiu, his Gold-Eater demonic snake would become stronger. Swoosh! Qiuqiu, who was on Lu Ming's body, wriggled rapidly and turned into a huge ball. It then flew toward the Gold-Eater demonic snake. Qiuqiu, Lu Ming was shocked. I'm fine. This snake looks delicious. I'm going to eat it. At this moment, Qiuqiu's voice sounded in Lu Ming's mind. Lu Ming immediately felt relieved. Man Ku stopped attacking. He wanted to see Lu Ming's metal life form being eaten and reveal a look of despair. Then, he wanted to suppress Lu Ming and let Lu Ming know the consequences of going against him. Qiuqiu was about to fly into the Gold-Eater demonic snake's mouth. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.